So check out my last video. Not my very last video, but I had a video talking about the Megan Good and Devon Franklin situation, right? And this is one of the reasons why I definitely believe in the biology first approach, right? Because you have to look at it from a perspective of cup theory. What is cup theory? When a woman's cup gets low, she starts going through sexual disintegration. She starts feeling like she needs to be less sexual so she can mature as a person. But if she's already been overstimulated sexually, and in that situation that she's in, if that doesn't pan out sexually in the way that she wanted it to, right? Or she doesn't get to a place where she's feminine and submissive with that man, she's already in her masculine energy. So if what his lifestyle requires of her isn't enough, or she starts reminiscing on the days of being feminine and submissive or masculine and dominant, then that masculine submissive stance that she's trying to take is not going to work for her. It's not, right? You can't go from a Harley to a Schwinn. I mean, shout out to my nigga Bobsled. Let's talk about that. Like, you can't go from a Harley to a Huffy. Like, once you've experienced dominant energy from a man, you can't really go back to dealing with a man who's taking a submissive or a feminine stance or trying to be joint dominant stances towards your point of view, right? You can't do that, because once you do that, you're going to mishandle that. You're going to take advantage of that, right? This also relates to past theory. So this woman went celibate, right? He agreed to it because he was a pastor, right? Then he gave into it. He let some of his standards go. He let some of his requirements go so he could be with her, which is taking a feminine position. He wanted her more than he wanted to do things his own way, because he allowed her religious overstimulation, emotional overstimulation at the idea of what she thought she should be religiously at the time to cause him to bend on what he wanted and how he wanted to do things as a man. So he allowed her, he's supposed to be the pastor, he's allowing her to say, oh, this is what God wants me to do, and God told me this is what I need to do. Now look at her. See, this is the thing dudes need to understand about Topangas, right? And I call women who take that wait for marriage for sex type of thing sage burning Topangas, especially if they've been sexually active before. Like, it's one thing if you're a virgin, and sometimes even if you are a virgin, right? Because what is virginity really, right? So when we're looking at this whole concept, and I'm looking at this situation now, Megan Good is out with this jacket on talking about Miss Good if you're nasty. Now, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I think Devon Franklin is wrong to a certain extent, right? One, should have set his standards better, should have vetted her better. He shouldn't have allowed her to be on some no sex before marriage shit, right? But he went along with it because he was emotionally overstimulated by a faulty perspective of a biblical interpretation, which means that you're already taking a feminine stance based off of not being logical, not knowing how to interpret the scriptures in the first place, right? So he married this woman before knowing if they were sexually compatible, right? Some people say, oh, you can just have a conversation. No, conversation and chemistry ain't the same thing. And just because a woman's attracted to you on paper doesn't mean that she's highly sexually attracted to you. The more time that you spend around a woman before y'all actually have sex, the more of a damper you put on the sustainability of your sexual compatibility once you actually get into it, right? Especially if there is this mindset of viewing being more mature as being less sexual. So now she's single, and you see what was going on. It's like she started to deal with that pressure. A daddy versus father effect occurred, because oftentimes the daddy versus father effect will occur when a woman starts trying to tap into her female sexual nature. She starts trying to tap into her desire for male validation. She starts tapping into this subconscious need for male validation and this subconscious need for male sexual domination. And when she isn't getting that domination from a man, she's going to want it elsewhere. So she might start off small, wanting validation and spreading it out amongst a bunch of guys. But eventually she's going to want to concentrate that into a focal point. And if she never gets to concentrate that into a focal point, then a woman will just become a no-limit soldier, or she's going to be on some Topanga shit, or she's going to be on some sage burner shit. It's the toxic femininity triad. So I'm looking at this whole situation, and what you got to think about is, like, this man, I wouldn't be surprised if she cheated on him in the marriage, because I saw that whole thing with him crying on Instagram. I wouldn't be surprised. She probably came to him one day and said, you know what, I want to have an open marriage. I wouldn't be surprised at all. You know, that daddy versus father effect you saw it coming because she wasn't receptive, right? She was reacting. She wasn't receptive to what people were saying about her, right? When she wanted to dress in particular ways and put herself out there, even though she was married to a pastor, she still wanted to do things her own way that's masculine, right? No matter how attractive you are if you're masculine. So she wanted to do all these different things, and then he would just stick beside her. Eventually, he would have to nut up too. Eventually, he would have to put his backbone down. And that's a hurtful thing for a man, right? It's a hurtful thing where you bend for a woman because you think you're doing the right thing. You try to be her knight in shining armor. You're being a simp. I mean, basically, you're bending on what you want to make her comfortable. But then when it's time for you to put your foot down, that's when she's no longer she's not trying to get on your program. But you have to understand, what women is about consistency. You have to start how you finish. If you don't start how you finish, you got to transition. And that transitional place may get toxic. So it's best to just start a particular way, so it don't have to go to certain places. Because if she's really reacting, if she doesn't have a high enough sexual attraction to you, if she doesn't have a high enough respect for you as a man, if she doesn't desire to be with you enough, then she's going to be in a position where she might start to experience a lot of shit emotionally, to where she's going to want to rebel against the guidance and instruction that you're giving her. She's going to conflate things that are meant to hold her down and to restrict her, and she is going to get psychologically reacted, and she is going to conflate those things with things that are unfair, things that take away from her autonomy, things that take away from her agency, things that take away from her freedoms, and then she's going to desire to be free. And when a woman is in that space of mind, and the last thing that she had that she really liked, that she really wanted, was some dick from somebody else, then as soon as things aren't going her way, she gonna go do that. So either she gonna cheat or she gonna leave. It's one of the two, right? Either cheat, leave, or start getting disrespectful. Start doing different things to display her lack of femininity and submissiveness with you. And then, at any point in time, if she changes her mind, she's gonna feel free to do that, right? And the reason I say sage burner Topanga is because, a Topanga, that's oftentimes it's a woman who devalues sexual compatibility and sexual chemistry in a public eye in order to attract a simp to herself. Now, you can be a super simp, right? But even super simps get caught up sometimes. That's why you got to be a full man. That's why you got to be masculine and dominant. Because, Devon Franklin, he was very attractive to her. She was attracted to the guy. Successful. Looks, money, and status. Looks, money, and status is like, it's only going to go one or two ways, right? One way it's going to go is that you're going to realize that doesn't have the effect on a woman that you thought it did, right? Or you're going to use that to manipulate a woman, and then you might catch a Me Too charge for whatever reason, right? Or she's going to say that you were narcissistic and controlling and abusive. There is no substitute for good dick and guidance. I don't know how many times I got to tell niggas, and I'm going to scream it from the mountaintops. There's no substitute for good dick and guidance. If a woman doesn't lust you, like if a woman doesn't sexually desire you, right? And if she doesn't respect your leadership, your guidance, your authority, and say that you are a man that she wants to follow, then, she's not going to be feminine and submissive with you. And the moment the situation gets difficult, she going to split. She either going to split or she going to rebel. She going to get reacted, right? There's no substitute for good D and guidance. There's none. And you can't try to logic a woman into being feminine and submissive. It doesn't work. She either has to feel that way about you, or she's not going to feel that way about you. And when you understand that there's certain things that in life, it just works that way. Now, if you're willing to bend, right, and she's willing to bend, and y'all willing to cooperate and compromise, sometimes that can be cool, right? But that only works in situations where you're not overstimulated, right? Megan Good been fucking out here a long time. She's definitely overstimulated. So trying to wait for marriage to have sex with a woman who already has a history of being, to a certain extent, what people would probably consider being promiscuous, or having a lot of, wild, fun, kinky sexual experiences. When you take that route, you give a woman a pass. It doesn't matter what the reason is for. Women will conveniently pick up God, right, and try to use God as a reason to why they don't want to be, behaving in a certain way sexually, when that nature, that aspect of themselves is still within there. And they're going to repress it. They're going to rationalize that repression, right? But then they're going to use the Bible to do it, even if their definitions and their interpretation is flawed. And then after they do that, they're going to get to a place where they're just doing that because their cup is low. They're in an insecure place. And after they get out of that insecure place, then their mindset, that whole energy shit is just going to flip it's going to do a 180. And when it does a 180, that's the crux of a gentleman gigolo complex. When that sexual energy does a 180, she's repressing it while you're pouring validation into her. You're pouring social validation, emotional validation, financial resources, love, attention, affection, energy, time, right? Without being dominant, without making sure that she's receptive to your guidance, without making sure that she knows how to follow instructions, without making sure that she's in a position where she wants to belong to you, right? Megan Good didn't take that nigga last name, right? Megan Good didn't try to, I didn't see that she said she was trying to have kids with the dude. That's probably part of the reason why they got divorced. There's no way a woman is going to go into the age range of her, no way a woman's going to go into the age range of her biological clock ticking without her having this innate desire for children, unless she's so masculine that it's pretty much made her like emotionally barren, to where it just cuts off her desire to be nurturing as a woman. That's unnatural. I'm sorry. I know people, for some people it might work. Like for some women, maybe they just have a call and it's just so important to them. But if you have a man, that's a completely different subject. And you can tell yourself that your man's cool with it, and maybe he is a man that's cool with it. But chances are, that's just not natural. It's not. So I know we looking at these particular situations, but you got to understand cup theory, right? Because if you don't understand cup theory, then if you take a religious, hyper-spiritual mindset to where you let people's religious indoctrination and religious sexual repression cause you to take a mindset where you are willing to lower and dim the shine of your dominance as a man so that you can make a woman feel comfortable. What you got to understand in those instances is that after that woman gets her feel of feeling validated, of feeling emotionally validated, right? After she gets her feel of playing the nice girl for a little while, just to show herself she can do it. After she gets her feel of that, right, just to show herself that she's desirable for a relationship or desirable for marriage, because maybe she hadn't been married at that point in her life, or maybe she ain't been in a relationship in a little while. So she leverages access to her sexually in order to get that, right? And after she has that experience, after she gets to that point, that's where she's going to take a mindset to where, all right, I have my fill. It's time for me to get back to being who I am. And then she is going to start behaving in a way with you that's going to be somewhat disrespectful. That's going to show that she doesn't value your leadership or your guidance. She's going to start behaving in a way where that thought inside of her is trying to come out. Now, what I say is this. Don't let a woman be your housewife if she ain't your hoe. There's no substitute for good D and guidance. There's no substitute for desire and respect, right? Because what you got to understand is that masculine and dominant, feminine and submissive, those are integratable points of view. When you try to integrate, when you're not in polarity, it's going to be transactional, or it's going to be manipulative and or abusive in some capacity, right? That's what you got to understand. So like if you're masculine and submissive, you try to integrate, it's going to be transactional, or you're going to get worn out. If you're feminine and dominant, you're going to get bored, right? You try to integrate, when you're feminine and dominant, you're either going to get bored or you're going to get abusive. It's not but so many ways that you can deal with those particular situations. You have to know how to understand sexual polarity, understand sexual energy work, and then put yourself in the right place, in the right stance to carry those things out the right way. A lot of people, they take this mindset of, no, we got to be friends first. That friends first shit is the biggest lie you've ever been told. Fuck friends first. That's not real. It can be real for some people, but oftentimes somebody's in control, and oftentimes the woman is in control, and she's just getting enough of what she needs so that her needs are met, and then the man is taking a feminine submissive stance for her. Friends first for a man is either you being masculine submissive or feminine submissive, and chances are you being feminine submissive, or you're socially programmed into taking a feminine stance thinking it's a masculine stance, right? Which means you don't think that a woman can be sexually attracted to you or desire you enough, or you have a Madonna whore complex, or you've been burnt out there dealing with women and hookup culture. So you're like, you know what? I want to be friends first. You know, she got to be my friend, right? That's bullshit. That's just like if you are a parent and you have a child, and before you ever, let's say you have a child underage, you don't know who you are, you haven't established yourself, you have a child, you damn near still a child yourself. So instead of taking that leadership role, establishing boundaries, establishing respect, establishing your leadership skills to where you're respected by your child first and foremost, and then as they mature, they begin to appreciate you, they begin to understand you better, and then you can have a friendship later, right? You have a friendship later. Instead of that, you get emotionally overstimulated. You have a child because you want somebody to love you, and then you don't know shit, so you decide you want to be friends with your kids first, and then now they're one of these badass kids running around, one of these hyper-reacting kids running around, one of these fucked up kids running around, right? So what happens is here, when you're prematurely integrated, it works just like if you're a parent who decides to be friends first with your children. When they reach a certain point of maturity, or they reach a certain point of time and age where they become more of a threat, then they're not going to respect you trying to then put your foot down. Like, you should have did that in their more formative years. You should have did that when there was more mental elasticity, right? And maybe I can make a video about that, right? Because there's mental elasticity. Let's say that when you first meet a woman, that is where you have sexual polarity elasticity. That's where you have elasticity about what she's going to be open to sexually when you first meet a woman, right? That's where you have her openness to how dominant you are. It's going to be more so established in that beginning time. You can do it later on, but it's just going to be like if you're a parent and you try to raise your child like they're your friend first before you establish your leadership, then they feel like their opinion is equal to yours. So when you get to a point in life, right, to where they're starting to make some really bad mistakes, you know, they don't want to listen to what you got to say. They don't care. And they want to argue with you. It's going to be very difficult. And it's going to be a lot of stuff that's going on. So what happens with that? It's like the daddy versus father effect, right? Daddy versus father effect. So when that time comes, if that wasn't already integrated in there, if that wasn't already part of the polarity, part of the dynamic that was understood, then she doesn't really see your leadership and your guidance as something that is necessary, something that she needs, something that she desires. She feels like she already knows herself, or if she's reaching a place of feeling unsure about things, she doesn't trust you as the place she goes to the guidance to get things cleared up. She wants to say, okay, well, you just trust God and I just trust God, and I go to God for myself and you go to God for yourself. Where in the Bible does it say that? Right? Where in the Bible does it say that? If people really want to look at the Bible says that Christ is the head of the man, and the man is the head of the woman. If people really want to talk about the Bible and shit, and then when you look at it from that perspective, you can say, well, if Christ is the head of the man and the man is the head of the woman, or sometimes it's better for a woman to be single so that she can attend to the things of the Lord, because if she's married, she has to attend to the things of her husband. That's who you got to submit to, right? So this is something a lot of people don't want to hear, right? It's not really a woman's job to try to submit herself to God as much as it is to submit herself to her husband, who's already submitted to God. But guess what? Women take a masculine stance of what they think it looks like within their flawed interpretations of the Bible and scriptures and spirituality. And they have their own standard of what they think it means for their man to be submitted to God. So anytime that their man doesn't reach that standard to them, then they disqualify that man in their mind about what his leadership is, so that she feels like she wants to skip over the man and go straight to God. Right? But oftentimes what she thinks is God is really her social programming. It's her traditions. It's her social value, her cultural values. It's her people pleasing. It's her psychological reactance. It's her emotional overstimulation. It's her outside influence. It's whatever her emotions say at the time. Sometimes it's other religions, other influences, right? So what I'm just saying to say is this is just part 2, talking about the Devon Franklin and Megan Good situation, right? It's Miss Good if you're nasty. But before I finish this up, I will say this. It's like, I do believe that her being more sexual now, her tapping into that more now, Devon Franklin should have led in a way to where she could have experienced that with him. He didn't lead in a way to where she could have experienced that with him, because he allowed her to take the lead. He allowed her to spend too much time not integrating sex and emotions, to have emotions separately, to where she felt entitled to that emotional validation, to whatever stance and masculine perspective she took, to that feminine energy. So because he gave her so much of that, when he's trying to, put his dominance forward or his masculinity forward, she's not fucking with it. She feels reactive because he feels like she feels like he's taking away from what it is that he added to her. Right? That's why you got to make sure a woman's receptive to your dominant energy, not just being masculine submissive, not just being cooperative with you. Because cooperative isn't really something that's meant to be sustainable forever, unless you're in like a small town where there's no overstimulation. There's a lot of stimuli in this day and age. Everybody hates 9-to-5 jobs now, right? There's a lot of things everybody hates. Everybody wants to do things a particular way, right? And the way that people want to do things is in a way to where they're going to be unsatisfied by doing something that feels transactional. Once a woman has experienced having intrinsic sexual desire for a man, when her cup gets low, she may be able to deal with the man she doesn't feel intrinsic sexual desire for, or receptiveness to his dominance and masculinity, because she vilifies it at the time. She sees him as a gentleman, and that passes a gigolo. But once she gets more integrated within herself, once she starts to fill her cup back up, that's where she is going to get back into a more sexual mindset, a more sexually open mindset. And if that man doesn't hit on those spots for her, if that man doesn't trigger those desires for her, if she sees growth as being more masculine, right, and to separate herself from her man and think about things on her own and figure shit out for herself, then she is going to disrespect this man until he's going to have to walk away. Either he's going to walk away or he's going to get abusive. It's one of the two, right? So this is Brodie talking about this Megan Good, Devon Franklin situation. I'm out.